This episode of GenreVision is brought to you by our premium subscribers at patreon.com/GenreVision. For $5 a month, our premium subscribers get access to an ever-growing library of exclusive bonus content, including weekly pre-show recordings, peeks behind the scenes, and a big currently consuming session every month. Sign up at patreon.com/GenreVision.
Greetings, loyal listeners and new recruits. I'm Drew Deach.
I'm Travis Newton.
And this is GenreVision. Every week, Travis and I review and recommend horror films, action movies, fantasy flicks, sci-fi cinema, and more. And this week, we are going to lose control with Brandon Cronenberg's Possessor.
Uncut.
Yeah, that's we should say Possessor Uncut, because they have really stressed that this movie is uncut. Before we do that, just a couple quick calls to action. FinFlix Season 2 is going to be wrapping up soon, and we are planning to record our final episode for the season that is going to be on Anaconda, which you might be saying, Anaconda for FinFlix, what?
Yeah, to which I reply, you bet your ass.
That's right. I cannot wait for the thesis statement we're coming down on with that episode. So, but also, we have a recent episode of FinFlix up on The Reef. Go check that out. And the only other thing for calls to action is if you really love what we do here on GenreVision, we just got to straight up beg you all, please rate and review the show on the Apple Podcast Store. It helps us out so much. It helps us rise in the rankings, which means we get more eyeballs and earballs on the show. And if you do leave a written review, we will feature it here on the show in the following episode.
Word.
So Brandon Cronenberg's Possessor. This is a new release movie that has hit VOD. We strongly stress that you rent Possessor. Please give this movie money.
If you like hardcore sci-fi for grown-ups, Possessor is right up your alley. It is available for you to get right now on VOD platforms. You can go to the Apple Movies Store. You can go to Google Play. You can, I think you can probably rent it through Amazon at this point. So all the major VOD platforms are going to have this for both purchase and rental. It did have the weird distinction of getting some kind of theatrical release during this COVID hellscape year. So, the funny thing about it is it was in theaters for a brief period of time, and the distributor Neon was able to release it uncut because if a whole bunch of people aren't going to show up to your movie because there's a fucking pandemic on, why would you care about cutting it down to an R rating? Like the movie theaters, the drive-ins that are going to show this stuff at this point, they simply weren't going to care that it was unrated. Possessor is something that's been gaining a lot of momentum. So I'm excited to talk about it.
Possessor was a movie that I went in totally blind. All I knew is it's the new Brandon Cronenberg movie, and it's been getting very good reviews. And I've seen the only image that I had seen from the movie, which is the poster, which has been used in all the marketing, is that weird kind of melted Andrea Riseborough face. And I was like, that's all I know. Don't know nothing else about it. So jumping into this movie was a total blind watch, and honestly, I am so glad I did that.
Same. This had been gaining some critical momentum since it first started playing festivals. Like, it's been around a bit.
I do want to stress, and I don't normally do this because I want you to listen to our shows, but if you have an interest in Possessor, I highly recommend watching the movie first and then listening to our episode. We're going to stay spoiler-free for a while, and we will obviously, because this is a new release, we will tell you when we're going to open things up to spoilers. But it is always gratifying to be totally surprised by a movie. And a lot of the times that does mean you have to do the due diligence of making sure you will be surprised by not imbibing every piece of marketing that's out there, by not reading up on the movie. And I consciously did that for this movie, and I think I was better for it.
Yeah. I'm really glad that I didn't go and read the Wikipedia synopsis before I had actually watched it, which is something I do routinely do because I'm kind of, I don't care a whole lot about spoilers or.
No, me neither.
Like, if I had had the opportunity to read the screenplay before the movie came out, I probably would have done it, but I'm really glad I didn't, because this movie handles its reveals and its surprises beautifully. If you don't know, Possessor is about an alternate future. It could also be an alternate past, which is bizarre, but it seems to be a time without smartphones. Most of the phones everybody has are kind of a little bit outdated. Some people are walking around with flip phones. Some people have the pre-iPhone smartphones, kind of like Palm or BlackBerry kind of stuff. but it's not focused on a whole lot. There is this technology that allows certain people to like brain jack other people. There is a mysterious organization that the main character works for. The main character is named Tasha Vos, and she's played by Andrea Riseborough, who you might recognize as Mandy from Mandy.
I just want to say, as far as Brandon Cronenberg being the son of the very prolific and acclaimed director David Cronenberg.
Great names, choosing weird names. Yeah.
Yes, has carried over his daddy's his daddy's penchant for totally inhuman names, and I love it.
Tasha Vos works for this organization that is involved in corporate espionage. And the mechanics of this are not at all important. Like, I was reminded at times of things like Tenet or Inception, where there is an organization that's trying to commit some sort of espionage act or series of acts. And it's all kind of built up around this plot, you know, the mechanics of like what characters are actually going for. But here, that's not terribly important. This is a character study movie. You know, while there are plot elements to the espionage featured in the film, it's not at all about that. This is about the internal experiences of the characters, how they're feeling, what's going on in their heads, how are they holding together, what effect does the technology have upon their sanity, and other like really deeply thematic things going on. Like, that's what the movie's about. If you're going in expecting some like really intricate espionage plot, this ain't it. It's not Tinker Tailor Soldier Spy.
It's not that. It's not Inception. It's not a movie I even thought of, which nobody will remember, was Trance by Danny Boyle, which was one of the like post-Inception movies. This is a viciously stylized movie. I have seen Brandon Cronenberg's previous movie, Antiviral, but I do not have a good recollection of it.
I've seen it a couple times. I liked it.
Yeah, well, I don't remember disliking it, but Possessor, I feel, is an even stronger stylistic statement from him.
Oh, yeah. Well, he's evolved a lot as a filmmaker since Antiviral. I mean, Antiviral was already like a big statement from him, and it looked great. You know, the two movies, Antiviral and Possessor, share a DP. It's Kareem Hussein, and like both movies look great. But in the meantime, I think the kinds of movies that Brandon Cronenberg has wanted to make, like that has evolved as a genre. Like, he's clearly picked up stylistic influences from people like Panos Cosmatos, because there is a definite Beyond the Black Rainbow influence in Mandy influence here.
So there's a sequence in here that is so directly Beyond the Black Rainbow that and it's even better.
For sure. But, you know, Brandon Cronenberg wouldn't be doing this if it hadn't been for Panos Cosmatos doing it with Beyond the Black Rainbow. He's also picked up some influences from other filmmakers in that similar genre. Nicholas Winding Refn, for instance, you know, this sort of art house horror. There's some influences from things like Neon Demon and Only God Forgives specifically.
And it is not unfair to say that his father is a clear influence on the kinds of stories that he wants to tell, how he wants to tell them, and what he's interested in as far as the mechanics of the story and how it relates to the characters. Because something that I think that's very valuable that he's carried over from David Cronenberg, and that I feel is almost like an anti-Nolan sentiment, is that the mechanics of things, of how things work, are showcased extremely simply. It does not get caught up on the instruction booklet nature of its science fiction.
Mm-hmm. So the whole idea behind this organization, I can't even remember if it gets a name. There is a company name associated with it, but again, like the actual companies and the players, you know, in this espionage thing, like the organizations, it don't really matter all that much. It's really more about the individuals. Tasha works for this company that uses her as an assassin, but instead of Tasha actually going and doing the killings in person, what they do is they find someone who's close to their target, they abduct them, they put this implant in their head, and they allow somebody like Tasha to control them remotely like a human drone. We see in this opening sequence this character who is about to commit this really graphic assassination, and we don't know initially that she's controlled by Tasha, but you know, we learn fairly quickly that she is, and I don't consider that a spoiler, but man, is this opening sequence fucking dynamite. What a mission statement.
I think I said to you, that's how you open a movie. It is an incredible pre-credit sequence that gets you right into the thick of the premise without you even realizing necessarily what's going on initially. You're just like, okay, I'm following this person. They're doing some weird stuff. I don't know exactly what's going on, but the filmmaking, the intention, the pacing, all of it is working in tandem to hook you. And then it explodes in violence, which I don't know how specific we want to get with the descriptions. I think we'll save the descriptions of violence for after the spoiler wall, because they are easily one of our favorite things about the movie.
Sure. Well, and this is coming from two people who really love gore effects, like when they're done very well, and they're done very, very well and very extravagantly here. But suffice to say, like, there is like a really graphic shooting at the beginning of this movie.
Anything that happens in this movie that could be considered graphic is graphic in all caps.
Very much so.
I mean, here's the thing. Like, when you talk about gore effects, I won't spoil any of the specifics right now, but I'll say that a lot of times I think gore effects, I'm using a royal we look at them as pure entertainment. You know, like I look at something like the Friday the 13th series or a lot of horror where it's like, yeah, the gore effect's really violent, but the intention behind it is not always necessarily to repulse you. It is there to be entertaining. That is not the case at any point in Possessor. Every gore effect in this made me want to tear my skin off.
It emphasizes pain. The most relatable example I can think of is there is a really simple and effective gore effect in the original Pet Sematary movie. And that is the Achilles tendon slice.
Mm-hmm.
Very well done effect. I believe the baby's hand was fake. Gage's hand was fake. The scalpel was fake. The ankle was fake. But just that simple effect and the intimacy of that violence and the way that gag is staged made it so unbelievably shocking that it's become this like indelible moment from that movie. The violence in Possessor is like that, but amplified to such an extreme that Drew and I just like didn't stop gasping the entire time. And it keeps one-upping itself.
It does. I mean, I think the word that you hit on that's perfect is intimacy, because whenever there is a moment of violence in Possessor, it is going to get an extreme close-up on it. I mean, it is going to get you right up in the thick of it, in the pool of blood, in the impact, in the pull, all of it. It is phenomenal, brutal filmmaking. If just for the gory sequences alone, Possessor merits a recommendation. But there is so much more to it than that.
And it's not a gore movie in the way that like delights in the artifice of movie gore. Now that can be a beautiful thing.
That's what I'm saying is that when we normally, a lot of gore is like, yeah, the intention behind it is fun. Right. Nothing in Possessor is fun.
This isn't like the kind of gore where Jason is going to chop somebody's head in half with a machete and you see like the head, bisected in this like silly, unrealistic thing. Like that kind of stuff is great. Don't get me wrong. This takes a different approach that is like way more personal and designed to evoke sensations of pain.
The effect that I kept thinking about when these would happen is when the arm gets chopped up in Green Room.
Sure.
Like it's that kind of intent. The intention is like, we want this to look as real as we can oftentimes, and we want it to hurt every time. There are copious amounts of blood in this movie, but for comparison, say like a movie like Coralie Fargeau's Revenge. That movie goes so over the top with its violence that at a point you realize it's an artistic statement. And while there are still painful moments, it is a cathartic thing, the violence in that movie. The violence in Possessor is nothing but cruel.
Right. It's not like there are gallons and gallons of blood in Possessor. There's certainly a lot of blood. There's a lot of blood. Yeah, there's a lot of blood in the film. Don't get me wrong, but like the way that these gags are staged is difficult to describe without you seeing them. There is one violent gag in the movie that is done for pure artistic intent. Like it's basically like a dream sequence where someone's head is grasped and crushed, but not in a way that it's like, blood and brains are coming out. It's basically like their head suddenly turns into a rubber mask of a head in somebody's hands, and the effect feels violent and bizarre and strange.
Oh, I gasped.
It's like, ooh, yeah, but it's shocking nevertheless. So Getting back to plot elements, Tasha Vos gets caught up in her next job where she has to inhabit the body and the brain of this young guy played by Christopher Abbott, who you might recognize from Girls. He's dating the daughter of some tech giant who runs this company. He happens to be played by Sean Bean.
Hell yeah.
And that's the company's next target. Like, they're trying to kill Sean Bean. So they're trying to get into this dude Colin's head, and that's where Tasha ends up. From there, things go very wrong.
Or do they? So yeah, I don't want to talk too much about plot, because in all honesty, the plot is fairly secondary, like you've been saying. It's much more character study stuff. We will certainly hit on the gore again when we get past the spoiler wall, because we'll be able to talk specifics.
Yeah.
I want to talk about filmmaking, and particularly, because it's something that has been sticking with me, sound design and music in this movie.
Oh yeah, the sound design and the music starts before the movie actually starts in earnest. Like, there is this incredible ambient sound design of somebody moving around in a hotel room, and you can clearly tell that there's a lot of meticulous work put into that. The sounds of movement and ambient noise and zippers zipping up. It establishes a really moody sensation right off the bat. Like, if you can watch this movie while wearing headphones, I highly recommend it.
That's what I did.
Really, it really wants to wrap you up in the intimacy of the sound.
It immediately, from the word go, kicked me into a mood of dread. Like, I was immediately like, I was scared. Like, the movie immediately scared me without seeing, like, I was scared while I was looking at 20, independent movie logos, studio logos, like, and here's some other film fun thing. But all of this sound was happening and this ambient music. And I was like, I'm actually like, I'm uneasy, and the movie hasn't even really started. So that's a huge credit. Brandon Cronenberg has definitely a modern sensibility when it comes to his approaches to framing. And modern sensibility is such a broad catch-all term, but you specifically, when we were watching it, brought up Mr. Robot, and I think that's a somewhat apt comparison. I think there are things like Brandon Cronenberg at least seems to do a lot more not locked down shots. There's a lot of, like handheld, just kind of jitter from, somebody holding the camera. I don't know if that's always true or if it's sometimes simulated, but regardless, it's there. So when he does lock down a shot, it feels very important. And he does that in a couple particular instances to establish the importance of location.
Yes, and he often tends to stray away from like really, really wide shots. The film's not in scope, so that the aspect ratio is a little bit taller, and it's a lot more about the intimacy. It's characters together in smaller rooms, and so that taller aspect ratio, widescreen aspect ratio, really does help it. But it forces characters to be closer together in the frame, and so things don't feel like this epic, broad, wide vista. Like, that movie's never really going for that.
No, because this is a movie that thematically and plot-wise is about being inside of people's heads.
Yes.
And so that intimacy is reflected in the filmmaking. And also, the colors and lighting in this movie are just to die for.
Yeah, this flick's gorgeous.
There is a sequence where Andrew Riceborough is talking to her, basically her handler and her boss, who's played by the always welcome and always excellent Jennifer Jason Leigh, who once again proves that she is always excellent. She does incredible small stuff, which is just brilliant.
Kind of a similar role here to what she did in Annihilation, but it's a lot more human. Like, Annihilation was all about like pure chilliness, like really distant.
There is a level of sinisterness to her character in here, but it is not as it's not as apparent, and it's not as kind of baked into the character as it was in Annihilation. But she's great. There's this scene where they are going over her previous mission and looking at kill photos on this giant wall-sized screen. And they're looking at these extreme close-ups of the body and just all of this blood to the point that it looks like abstract art. And there are these amazing, amazing reaction shots on Jennifer Jason Leigh and Andrew Riceborough where the red from the blood on the picture is, and they've used it in a lot of like the photos for the marketing and stuff, and it's just looked, I had no idea what I was looking at when I saw that, but now knowing it is gorgeous. Like, it is absolutely one of the prettiest movies I've seen this year. And again, it's pretty in a way that I think rides that really good line between it is showy, it knows it's pretty, but it is not like, it's not rubbing your face in it all the time.
Well, and there's also a certain level of really intentional ugliness to this movie.
Sure.
You know, the technology in this movie is really designed to kind of look ugly in a specific way, but in that way, it's like beautiful design.
Oh my God, the vape pens. People are carrying around for whatever reason. If I ever had the chance to interview Brandon Cronenberg, this would be my first question: is what is up with all the vaping in Possessor?
It's true. Everybody vapes.
Everybody is vaping, and the thing is, they've obviously crafted. There's some, there's I think one moment where somebody says like, that looks like at least a normal vape pen, but there's these giant boxes, these giant box vaporizers.
Yeah, these big chunky rectangles that people carry in their hands, which are real. Like, it's a real thing.
It is, but like it's just such it has to be a conscious decision to do that. And it's like, is it supposed to be that this is really, because they look ugly as fuck. Mm-hmm. Like, they look really cumbersome and stupid, and everybody carries them, which I think is great. But that is clear, like you're saying, there's an intention here. And I think I love this trend now of setting these kind of genre stories in a world that is skewed to our own. That I think I saw a date at very early on when Andrea Riseborough's character is watching a news report, and there was like a little button up in the top, and it had a date, and it said February something, and I think it said 2005.
Could be. This is it appears to be a universe where there are no iPhones and no Android phones. So it seems like the current generation of smartphones is not there. And also, I'm sure the internet exists, but they never really reference the internet directly. The most, I guess, contemporary technological thing we see, other than like the big chunky vapes, is Christopher Abbott's character works at this center where he has to wear VR goggles, and he's forced to identify certain like home products, like home decoration products, in footage that he views in his VR goggles. It's a really, really strange bit of commentary. He's forced to watch all these bizarre video clips, and he's like, okay, I have to find the drapes in this video.
What kind of drape? Well, it's, I mean, I don't think this is spoilery, but talking about, again, I love the world that Possessor creates. It's phenomenal world building without ever having to sit down and just, dump exposition on the audience.
Yeah. It takes some cues from Black Mirror, but not heavily enough to be like, ugh, it's Black Mirror.
Well, the other thing is it's not interested in being, a simulacrum of what we think reality could look like with tech, like Black Mirror is trying to do. This is totally comfortable and confident in creating its own world and own aesthetic, certainly drawing upon imagery and design that evokes some sense of familiarity from us, but it's not so committed to that it strives for whatever we might think is, quote, realism with that kind of tech stuff. So there's this job that Christopher Abbott's character, I think his name is Colin.
Yeah, Colin Tate, I believe.
Yeah, Colin Tate. He surveils these people and makes notes about like what their home products are and stuff. And what I love is that later I was like, what's going on here? Like, people are just being surveilled upon, and then it turns out that people know that they are viewed by this company.
Yeah, they've consented for this company to like watch their lives,
to learn things about the products that they use, and it's fascinating. It is stuff that flavors the commentary of the world without getting bogged down by it and ignoring the core of the story, which are the characters. And I think if we want to talk about characters, we're going to have to cross the spoiler wall here. I mean, I think before we do, I think we can just blanket say that the work that the actors are putting in here is phenomenal in a way. And I'll talk about this when we get over the spoiler wall. This is a movie made for actors.
Yeah. I mean, it's definitely I think kind of an actor's dream in a lot of ways, because it's actors playing characters who are also acting, but also forced to question what it is they're doing in their performances. Like there's this brilliant scene, after Tasha completes her first job that we see in the film, she goes back home, and there's a moment outside where, of course, she's vaping on her huge freaking vape rig, pulling mad cotton, and she's practicing her lines that she's going to say to the father of her child when she finally sees both of them. Like, wow, this could be seen as like a social anxiety thing. Like, of course, people with social anxiety like to practice what they're going to say before they're going to say it. That's, that's pretty common. But this immediately calls into question every interaction that Tasha has through the rest of the movie. It's like, well, how much of this is really performance? Is it all performance? It could be. It really does throw everything into doubt.
And when we get over the spoiler wall, I think I'll use that to inform my kind of read on the movie. But like I said, I think if you haven't gotten at this point, Possessor is very fucking good. It is easily one of my favorite movies of the year. So we highly recommend it. But if you want to stick around, I think we'll get into more of the specifics of the movie now and cross over into the spoiler wall. So like you talked about, Possessor, there is a plot, and the plot for I think there is a surface complication to it that could very easily put people off. But I think what the movie does so brilliantly, like you said, it never gets bogged down in that. It never stops the momentum of the movie to make the plot important. It is all about what the characters are experiencing. And it's a fascinating construction here to have essentially a character possessing another character. So we know that, okay, this is actually Andrea Riseborough, but we're seeing it through this Colin Tate character played by Christopher Abbott. And these things that she is trying to, perfect her performance of him. She's trying to, fake her way through his life until she can get to the target, Sean Bean, and kill him. And there's so many wonderful moments. Like early on, we see a close up of her at a dinner party with her. I don't know if it's like her ex-husband or if they just had a child together and they kind of split and now they're thinking about getting back together.
They're romantic partners. Like the specifics of it, again, they're not gone into. It's just like, yeah, these people, it's clear that there's been some trouble in their relationship, but they're together now. And
that's what I mean is you get the gist of everything. They don't, there doesn't have to be a scene where the father character, whose name I think was Michael, yes. Where Michael, has to say like, look, I know we got divorced just, a year ago and it's been very difficult to raise our son. And it's like, the movie doesn't get bogged down that. Instead, it channels pure emotion. So like there's this earlier part where Tasha is at this dinner party and she's clearly very uncomfortable and she's cutting an apple. And she cuts it a very specific way. And then when she is possessing Colin, the first morning that she wakes up as him, we get another close up of him cutting the apple this particular way. And it's a great thing. It's like, her whole job is to act as somebody else, but she can't help but put parts of herself into the performance. So I love all that. Now that we're over the spoiler wall, we got to go back to the opening of this movie, because the opening of this movie, we said, it's got an amazing opening. This assassination scene in which the person that Tasha is possessing walks up to this guy and stabs him in the throat.
Yeah.
And the close-up on this gag is so horrific. It's the first real gore gag we get, and it sets the mission statement of like, if you're going to see violence in this movie, it's going to fucking hurt, and we're going to get right up in it. And she stabs him, and he's bleeding all over, and he falls on the ground. She stabs him a whole bunch of times. And then later, when Tasha is, been disconnected and she's going back to Michael and to see her son, there is this terrifying nightmare moment in which she's looking at Michael and they're having a conversation, and all of a sudden he has the throat wound on his neck, and it's starting to bleed.
Spurting blood. Oh yeah.
Oh my God. And you just reminded me of another thing, is that in that opening sequence, she's supposed to shoot herself.
It's like Looper. It's part of the deal. You got to take yourself out at the end of every mission.
Right. And so, but from the beginning, she cannot pull the trigger. There's something holding her back. And so she actually ends up getting shot by a whole bunch of cops that come in. And there's this close up of one of the cops shooting her in the face. And this fucking squib effect, man, where she gets shot in the cheek and we see it happen. And then just this like stream of blood just shoots right at, oh my God, it's so fucking good.
The violence is, I think, the most impactful of any movie I've seen this year.
Oh yeah, hands down.
I sometimes feel really mixed about fetishizing this violence, but I think when you show a lot of violence that has almost no effect like this, that's almost worse. Whereas with violence like this isn't like sexy. This is not cool.
No,
this
like I said, it's
horrifying.
It's cruelty. All the violence in this movie is rooted in cruelty and pain. It is not.
It's not a torture porn movie, though.
No. What I mean, my excitement for it stems more from the fact that I think they pull all of these gags off incredibly well, and it is all for the majority that I can see. It is primarily all done practically, which is great. We don't have a bunch of digital blood squibs, exploding on people that I could tell, at least. But it's very clear that whenever they wanted to have a really violent effect, they did that effect. They made that effect. There are so many moments in this movie where I praise the tactile nature of it. And one of them is what we were alluding to with the Beyond the Black Rainbow sequence. When Tasha first connects to Colin, we see what that is like internally. And it is this nightmare music video dream sequence.
Yeah.
Of seeing her body melt and then reform as Colin. And they really have some kind of like wax figures or something that they made of the actors that they melted for real. And they got close-ups of and everything. And it's like, this is a million times better than whatever you probably could have come up with digitally.
Yeah, because it does a great job of not only looking cool, but doing a better job of getting across an emotional intent instead of just being a dazzling effects sequence. Like it becomes much more visceral.
And selling the mood.
Yeah.
Like it sells the mood of everything. And I love that. And there is a lot of surreal imagery when we enter this kind of brainscape that Tasha and Colin are sharing. A
lot of stroboscopic imagery. If you have trouble with strobing images, bright flashing lights, maybe skip this.
Well, not just that. There's a sequence later where they're trying to she's having some kind of feedback or disorientation, and this agent is there to try and help her out, and he keeps flipping on this light on and off, and every time he flips it, the camera cuts. And there is a new kind of, we're in the headspace, basically. And that sequence was so disorienting to me in a very positive way.
Yeah. Well, they cut to the same set, but it's doused in like really, really saturated red light. And it's about a shift in perspective because some of it, the red light stuff is supposed to be from Tate's perspective. And then the other stuff is supposed to be from Tasha's perspective, but she's still in Tate's body. And the movie, after a while, you start to think what perspective you're in, but then by the end of the movie, it causes you to question who was in control, like whose perspective was I seeing through in this scene? Was it Tate acting this way, or was it Tasha taking control? You don't know. This word gets thrown around a lot, but it's a mind fuck.
It's a movie about control, which is one of my favorite artistic questions is what is control? Because that's such a fantastic springboard to talk about so many different facets of humanity.
Control, free will.
Sure. And I think this sidesteps a kind of more glib read of about, what is free will. And it is more specifically about control because there's this monologue towards the end of the movie, which you described as the bar napkin idea of the movie, which I don't think is dismissive. I think you're right, in which towards the end, Tate is going to seek out Tasha's family because he apparently is connecting with her mind and her memory and knows this place. Maybe it's him. I don't know. But because there's this bleed happening between the two of them.
Yeah.
And which is demonstrated in that strobing sequence in which he cracks her face in the headscape and then takes her face off and puts it on his own face and then is jumping through these different memories that she has. Super crazy, super dope. And in this ending, he's holding Michael hostage, and he talks to him about they have a cat, and he says, like, do you worry about worms with the cat? You know, parasites. Like, what if the worm got into you and got into your brain and it made you start doing things? And you ask yourself, did I do that, or was it the worm? And it's a great statement and kind of boils the movie's idea down to a really, I don't want to say palatable, but at least digestible idea.
Yeah, well, it manages to encapsulate the basic, you know, like I said, bar napkin idea of the movie. And this is like, you can probably tell, like, oh, this is probably the idea that Brandon Cronenberg had when he was first coming up with the movie. Like, this is what's the nugget at the center of this movie. And it comes across pretty well, even though the movie is just like sort of like baldly stating its intentions in that moment. The movie is working so well that I really didn't mind. Because at least they're not talking in like explanatory Nolan speak.
No, not talking about totems and, you know,
yeah,
whatever architecture stuff. And I'm not saying that because I like Inception, not trying to dog on Inception, but I think that has become an issue with this kind of story in science fiction, is that, like, the way I described it is like it becomes more like an instruction book than it is a story. And this sidesteps all that by staying totally in our characters' perspectives and in their heads. And I think that really benefits the movie. What also, again, I know we keep coming back to it, but it really is one of the highlights of the movie. I don't know if a highlight, but it's one of the most effective things in the movie is the violence. When Tasha as Tate finally gets to Sean Bean to kill him. Sean Bean has become this, you know, meme of if he's in a movie, he's going to die. This is in serious contention for the greatest Sean Bean death ever caught on film.
My God. Just when you think it couldn't get any nastier, this scene goes to insane places. And there's one shot that's a high angle looking down at Sean Bean's face after Tasha in Tate's body rams some sort of like rod.
It's a fireplace poker.
Oh, it's a fireplace poker. Rams it down through his teeth and into his mouth and is pushing it around and grinding his teeth. And there's an extreme close-up of his teeth being pushed out. I was like, oh my fucking God. Like, I really had no idea how to handle it.
Well, here's the best. Like, that fucked me up. And then the movie's like, no, don't worry. We got one more. Then she sticks it in his eye and plucks his eyeball out. And it is an extreme close-up as this eyeball plucks out of a fake Sean Bean head. Brilliant. And it's all, it looks perfect. Like, there is never a moment where I was taken out by like, oh, I can, you know, I see the gag of this. I was so drawn into the violence, and that I bought it as real, and it was extremely affecting. Early in the beginning of the movie, there is this test that Tasha has to do, and I love these scenes in movies because it always makes me think of the Dalai Lama test, where it's like, here's a bunch of objects, and you have to figure out like which one belonged to the previous Dalai Lama, and if you know the right one, then that means you're the next, you know, reincarnation of them.
Yeah, I'm Night Shyamalan's Avatar: The Last Airbender.
Yep. Totally stole that. I like this. I like this idea. And the thing is that whenever she goes on one of these missions, when she comes back, she basically has a debriefing, and part of her debriefing is a psych evaluation where she has to look at a bunch of objects and decide, okay, is this mine? If it is, what is my relationship to it, and how do I feel about it?
A little bit like Blade Runner 2049 as well.
Sure. Yep. The whole kind of debriefing thing that Ryan Gosling does when he comes back to the precinct. But in this opening, there's a discussion about Tasha wanting to go back to Michael and her son. And Jennifer Jason Leigh's character is clearly like not on board with that. She's like, I thought you had given this life up. You know, I thought, you know, you were going to commit yourself to this, the job, the work. And so she visits, we see her relationship. She seems to, there's something distant that she feels about Michael and her son, but she has some kind of, feelings for them. There's a scene that her and her son share on a couch where he like activates this weird, creepy extra puppet thing. But she also goes into her son's bedroom at night, and I think she just like smells him, and she's like, "Am I losing you?" And it's and it is this thing of like how close to total detachment is she, and is this something she wants?
Yeah, and the end of the movie almost gives you a completely affirmative answer to that.
Oh, I think it does.
Well, you think, but there is no chance at the end of the movie for these characters to sit around and talk about what happened. I think the movie wants you to strongly suspect there's a certain interpretation, but there's enough ambiguity at that end that I think, certain viewers may be frustrated by just how crazy the ending gets. Like it definitely goes to like some existence levels of like, what? Whoa.
I felt that, okay, I'm just going to talk about this thing because I love the ending of this movie. It's brutal, it's dark, it's cold, it's cynical, but I think it's one of the best endings of the year that I've seen.
There's an incredible reveal. Whoa.
Woof. I mean, I don't even know. Do we want to spoil that? Do we want to leave that? I mean, we can talk about it. I mean, you're all here.
I'm going to put up a mega spoiler wall right here. If you have not seen Possessor, don't listen to this.
Don't listen to this ending, because this ending is so good that I want to put up another spoiler wall to just talk about the ending, but I have to talk about it. So Tate eventually realizes, because Tasha does not kill Tate at the end of her mission, and is stuck in his head. But then we start thinking like he's going to other friends and stuff and trying to hide out with them. We don't know if Tate is now in control or if he's kind of bleeding in and out with Tasha. And eventually this scene when another agent, like the kind of contact for Tasha, comes to kind of, it's like, hey, we know that you didn't report in after the mission was done and everything. We're going to kind of deprogram you or whatever so we can get you taken care of. It is in this scene where it seems like in the psychic space, Tate takes over from Tasha and is kind of adapted her memories, but she's still stuck in there somewhere with him. Mm-hmm. So he's going to go find out who she is, find her family and hold them hostage and get her to appear to have a final confrontation with her. So in this ending, he's at Tasha's house. He's holding Michael hostage and is waiting for Tasha to appear in their shared brainscape. And Tasha has this moment of saying like, I'm not, because he's threatening. He's like, I'm going to kill him. I'm going to do it. And she's like, okay, go ahead, do it. You've been doing this whole time. It's been you. Like, I haven't been controlling you. You chose to do all this. It was you all along. So do it. Go ahead, kill him. And then Tasha seems to take over because her character in Tate's body changes to Andrea Riseborough. There's a couple moments in the movie where it happens, which I think are awesomely disorienting.
Yeah, the way that they jump cut back and forth between supposed perspectives is so beautifully disorienting and jarring, really shocking, like gasp-inducing moments. Even if it's just a simple jump cut to like somebody standing in a doorway, it's like, oh my God.
Yep, it's great. So she goes to kill Michael, but then someone stabs Tate, or I should say Tasha as Tate, and she swings around and shoots, and it's her son. And it's like, oh no, this is the tragedy of the ending, is that, she got so wrapped up in it that she ended up killing her own son. But then the son comes at her again and she freaks out and screams and shoots him, and she fucking blows his head open. And we see this incredible gag of a fake head from behind getting shot through. And then the son's lying there in a pool of blood. Tate's body, or again, Tasha as Tate, is laying there in a pool of blood, and they're looking at each other. And the son says, "Pull me out."
Yep, which we know is a line from earlier whenever an agent finishes a job, and it's like, uh-oh, who's the fucking agent in the kid?
and it's Jennifer Jason Leigh's character. And it's like, oh, this whole mission, I think the entire mission, the whole thing with Tate and everything was kind of a smoke screen. It was really about getting Tasha to eliminate her former life so she will be completely committed to the company, because the final scene that we see is the entire sequence with the objects again.
Yeah.
And in the in the original version, or in the first version, there's this little mounted butterfly that Tasha has. And she talks about, like, this is mine. I killed it when I was, however many years old as a little girl, and mounted it. And I felt guilty about it. I still feel guilty about it. And then in this ending, when she gets to the butterfly, she just says, like, I killed this as a little girl. And there's no talk about guilt. Mm-hmm. And then the movie ends. And it's like, oh God, she's become the agent that she wanted, because Jennifer Jason Leigh's character, I think her name's Girder.
Girder.
Great name. She said earlier, she's like, I didn't want you to go back to that life because I thought you were going to take over for me. Because she's even said, like, I can't do it anymore. Like, it's, she's taking, I think, some medication early on that we see. And it's like, okay, clearly it has effects on you the longer you do it, and she can't really do it anymore. So Tashi has to take over. So that's really been the whole mission of the entire movie.
Well, it's being able to disconnect her from her mundane human life so that she can lose her identity in others. And we see, like when she first enters Tate's body and she's controlling Tate, there are some moments where she appears to be really enjoying the experience of being in his body. And this is where the movie gets into its sexual content.
Oh yeah. I mean, there's a scene you won't forget from this, as far as that goes.
One shot in particular, Drew and I were like, whoa.
But to me, this solidified my take on the movie, which was, to me, this is a movie about acting. It's about a lot of stuff. My big takeaway was that it's about acting and the commitment that an actor has to make to portraying a role, and kind of, I think, the sacrifice you have to make to be the best actor or artist or professional, however you want to cut it, is that this is a movie that's saying you have to sacrifice a certain type of life to really be the best. And that's a really chilling statement, but it's one that, as far as the movie's thesis is concerned, ends up ringing very true.
Yes. That, I think, is all I have to say about this. I mean, obviously, like we said, this is one of the best of the year for us.
Oh, no question.
You'll hear us talk about this again at the end of the year.
I don't know if I'll watch it again, because Jesus Christ.
Whoa, yeah, it's a lot of movie to watch. Yeah, it's a lot to handle.
Well, it's a lot. I mean, here's the
intense
thing.
Experience.
You say it's a lot of movie. This movie flew by. It's just under an hour, 50 minutes. I think it's an hour 44.
It's got a good running time, but the pace does feel measured. It's not like bang, 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 bang. Really rapid pacing.
No, but it's the best kind of measured, in which, like, I never felt lulled. Like, there was never a, like, all right, like, can we move on from this? Everything felt so well constructed in the pacing, that the movie flew by. Like, I at one point I was like, there's 40 minutes of this left. What? Like, where did the hour go?
Sure. I could see if you're not into the character study aspect of it, maybe the movie would come off as a little slow, but I think there are so many other kind of distinct pleasures in the movie to be had, just in the sheer genre, audacity of it, just the genre elements that it tries to deliver on, it delivers on, and in such over the top ways. We've joked about it being called Possessor Uncut, but really, I don't think this movie would be anywhere near as impactful if it had been cut down to an R rating.
Good Lord, no.
Because some of the most remarkable stuff in this movie really pushes boundaries. And I never felt the movie was in, like, really poor taste.
Nope. Wasn't try hard. Wasn't edgelording. It is so assured and confident that it never feels like it's pushing the envelope just to push it. It is all rooted in the psyche of the characters, of how the story is doling itself out. I said to you before we started recording, it is right now in contention for my second favorite movie of the year. Like, it is that good. It's a movie where it's like, I want to recommend it to everybody, but you need to somewhat, like, at least have a cursory idea of what you're in for, knowing, like, it's a movie from a Cronenberg. So if you know at least that, I hope you have some kind of basis to go in on and know it's like, this one is gonna be fucky.
Mm-hmm. All right. If you wanted to pair something with Possessor, you would go to the shelf and you'd pull something off your shelf and recommend it to a friend. The shelf is a collaborative thing here on GenreVision. If you'd like to pull off a movie from your shelf and recommend it to us, then go to GenreVision.com, look for the post for Possessor on the main page, and leave a comment in the old comments section.
If you do comment with a shelf pick, we will feature it on next week's episode.
Absolutely.
So, Travis, what are you going to pull off the shelf for Possessor?
Devs. It's not a movie, but it's the new thing from the guy who did Ex Machina. That'd be Alex Garland. And it is another really heady, hard sci-fi thing from this year. It's a mini series of 8 episodes that was originally supposed to air on FX, but eventually they pushed it to just be on Hulu. And they kind of buried it. And the show is really, really heady. And I think from certain angles, it could be viewed as pretentious, but it touches on some of the same themes that Possessor does, talking about free will. But Devs gets a lot more lost in talking about metaphysics and religion. But honestly, I found it really, really compelling. It has an incredible soundtrack, really awesome cinematography, and a pretty cool cast and some really fun, twisty, plotty elements. So I think it's criminally underviewed. I think it's maybe hard to love, but I liked it a lot.
Well, I was trying not to pick another Cronenberg movie, but I kept coming back to it the more I thought about it. And I have to go with Existenz. Like there are moments in Possessor that I was like, this feels like an echo of Existenz. It's not like in its entirety, but there were so many moments where I was like, this feels like that same kind of unique world building that David Cronenberg did in this movie. It is a movie about playing roles.
Sure. It's kind of an Existenz Scanners riff in a lot of ways.
Yeah, I think it fits pretty comfortably in that. We did an episode on Existenz. I really like that episode, so I would encourage you to go listen to it. Existenz is another weird one, but I think it's kind of become one of my favorite Cronenberg movies in recent years, especially after we did our episode on it.
Pretty good.
I think it's one worth checking out, and it's one of kind of Cronenberg's last real hard dives into the kind of science fiction that he pretty much became the king of. And I think Possessor is more than a worthy successor to Existenz, and I think they'd be a tough pairing, but I think they are a very resonant pairing of movies. But now we do have to head over to the listener shelf picks for last week's episode on Showgirls. We had Eric Johnson, who went with Starry Eyes and Mulholland Drive. Great picks. T-Bones McRoanoke went with Roadhouse, which I've never seen.
Me neither.
Filing that away.
Yep.
JT actually had an anti-shelf pick, which is Jade, the other Esther House scripted movie from the same year as Showgirls, and directed by William Friedkin, which I know that is notoriously a hated movie, and I've never seen it, but I know
don't really
of its
know
notoriety.
anything about it. So
David Caruso is your lead, so
ooh.
There you go. Eric Fuchs went with another Verhoeven movie, which is Elle, which I did not see.
I saw that. I don't remember much about it, though.
Okay. Mr. Milksteak went with a couple suggestions. Hollow Man, which we will heartily recommend. The Temp, which I've not actually heard of before, so I always love getting turned on to a movie I've never heard of. And Mr. Milksteak also echoed Eric Fuchs' ask, I guess, with Striptease with Demi Moore. I don't know if we're going to be doing Striptease. Maybe. We'll see. Maybe. I don't know. And then the last shelf pick we had was from Wal Drumpus, who went with Tommy Wiseau's The Room because it too is someone's dream that is consuming them to the point that they have to live it. Which you are 100% right there, Wal Drumpus.
Yep.
So, as always, thank you all so much for these shelf picks. Love seeing them in the comments next week, and looking forward to the ones for Possessor, which we'll feature next week. Now let's do some currently consuming.
Nom 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 nom.
Travis, what's been on your plate?
I started listening to an album. I don't know why I really hadn't started listening to it before, but it's from a synthwave chiptune artist called Monomer. That is Monomer. And I had first heard of Monomer when they were credited with the soundtrack for the game The Mummy Demastered.
Great game.
Which was sort of a Metroidvania riff on that Tom Cruise Mummy movie. It ended up being way better than the movie.
Yep.
And the soundtrack is one of the best things about the game. Like, it's some really, really killer music. But anyway, Monomer put out an album in 2014 called Labyrinth, and it's incredible. I really don't have a whole lot more to say about it other than, like, you should go listen to it. Like, it strikes a really, really great balance between, throwbacky synth music, or what we call like outrun, that kind of subgenre, and chiptune, video game style music, 8 and 16-bit synths. Really cool stuff. Highly recommended. And that's all I got. What's been on your plate?
I'm not going to talk too much about this, although I'm sure people might want me to. I, for the very first time, saw The Karate Kid.
Oh.
And I know you had not seen it. I think you saw it earlier this year for the first time, or maybe last year?
A couple of years ago.
Okay. And you had the same thing where it's like, didn't grow up with this movie, never saw it. I was obviously kind of inundated with it through pop culture. Like, it's one of those movies that I felt like I had seen without ever seeing, because it was so omnipresent in so many aspects of my pop culture growing up.
Sure. Like, I understood when people were referencing Karate Kid, but I never saw the movie.
Right.
And now I understand the context for all the references, and it's like, oh, well, it's a pretty good movie.
Yeah, I mean, this is pretty much a lot of the same team that did Rocky, directed by John Avildsen, music's by Bill Conti. This is a very good movie. Like, I there's a part of me that wishes I had seen it when I was much younger, and it probably would have left an even stronger impression on me. But Pat Morita runs away with the movie. He's so phenomenal.
Good.
Yeah. The sequence in which he gets drunk, which apparently the studio wanted to cut, which is, I can't fathom that. It's the best sequence in the movie.
Yeah.
As far as from an acting perspective. Yeah. I mean, it crushed me. It crushed me. He's so good in that. And he got an Oscar nomination, and by God, he deserved it.
Yeah.
It's a fantastic sequence. The movie's great. Like, it flows along really nicely. Ralph Macchio doesn't feel like an actor, which I think might have actually hurt him in the long run. Like, he feels very, very specific for this kind of character and story. I really love the ending, as far as the character of, I think his name was Johnny Lawrence.
Sure. Yeah. I forget exactly.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure. I know everybody's going to take us to task. It's like, you don't know these Karate Kids. It's like, we didn't grow up with it. I just don't know. But I'm pretty sure it's Johnny Lawrence. Johnny Lawrence, who has been the main bully throughout. He's kind of the quintessential 80s movie bully character.
Yeah. Yep.
But I love the ending because they throw in some really interesting conflict right at the very end for him, which I think is part of the reason why, when they've done that Cobra Kai show, it actually is like, there's a good impetus to revisit this particular character, because where his story kind of left off actually made him a better character than just the archetype bully character from the 80s.
Absolutely. Yeah. He's a lot more than just Biff from Back to the Future.
Right. And I really liked that. I don't have a ton to say about it otherwise. And it's like, yep, I enjoyed my time with it. I watched it. I don't want to get too deep into this, but I watched it on the election night, the first night of the election.
It's a good escape. Yeah.
Yeah. And I did it. I was like, you know what? I want to watch something that I think has a pretty good chance of being really good, that I've never seen before. I'm going to watch Karate Kid. My phone was I put my phone away from me. I turned everything off. I just watched the Karate Kid, and it was like, yeah, that was a good decision I made. Mm-hmm. So I'm not saying anything new here, but yeah, Karate Kid's very good. And then let's wrap things up with our
comment of the week.
And we're going to do something a little different, because we have a new commenter in the comments. Their name's Mega Man Juno, which I adore because Mega Man Legends is one of my favorite games. It's a deep cut, and I really appreciate it. And they commented on the episode 4 Showgirls, talking a little bit about The Mandalorian, and also said that they are shivering with anticipation for next week's episode on The Mask versus Cable Guy. But they also went back and commented on our episode for The Peanut Butter Solution, in which they said, also recommend watching Making Contact, another movie distributed by the same company as The Peanut Butter Solution. Worth a watch. It's zany. And I know I saw Making Contact as a kid, and I know that was Roland Emmerich's first movie. And there's some really fun stuff in it, like a Darth Vader toy gets brought to life. Not Indian in the cupboard style, but like it actually comes to life and is like a full-size Darth Vader. I don't know, whatever licensing fee they paid to Lucasfilm to do that for this very small kind of dinky little supernatural kids horror movie.
Yeah, I don't know. Maybe somebody was friends with Lucas and he was like, yeah, you're going to have it.
Yeah. Well, here you go, guys. So, Mega Man Juno, welcome to the fold. We hope to see you in the comments. And yeah, Making Contact, I'm putting that one on the list too, because that might actually be one worth digging up and maybe doing as a versus or double feature with something. So thank you for the suggestion, Mega Man Juno. Thank you for joining the best comment section on the internet. We always say that, and we still mean it. So thank you all so much, and we will be back next week, as we said, for our versus episode for the month, which is a Jim Carrey versus the Mask versus the Cable Guy. So it's going to be a very, very high energy, wacky week next week. Maybe not from us, but definitely from the movies.
Yeah.
So we hope you'll be back next week for that. As always, we want to thank you so much for listening. I'm Drew Deitch.
I'm Travis Newton, and I'm vaping.
He's not actually vaping. But we will see you next week.
Right here on GenreVision.
Oh, God. Good Lord. Jesus fucking Jesus. Ah, what? Wow. That was insane.